have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running.
It was a rough week. I mean, her faves are down. They're struggling with, the front page of the New York Times this morning, Democrats struggling with African-American voters, particularly African-American men. This gender gap issue is real. It's a real problem, and you see the Democrats reacting to it. And I think what they are now finally in October, the election, coming to realize is that a lot of men think Democrats care more about dudes who want to become women than dudes who just want to be dudes.
So in some of our recent videos on this subject, we've talked a lot about how Kamala Harris is struggling with key demographics like the white working class, white men, men in general, Hispanics, union workers, etc., etc. But now you know the situation is extremely desperate when she is struggling with black voters. Obviously, this is a core constituency for her. Obviously, this is very key to delivering Democrats victory, not just in states like Georgia, but virtually every single one of the swing states in this nation relies some degree on black vote in those big urban areas. And a key caveat I've always brought up in regards to the subject is it's not about Donald Trump winning the black vote or even trying to be competitive with it. It really comes down ultimately to black turnout and black enthusiasm. If sizable enough portions of the black community choose to stay home, then Kamala Harris is in very big trouble. And in one of our recent videos where we were analyzing the early voting data, so this is not polls, these are the actual returns we're seeing from the places where voting has already started, that is exactly what is going on, right? Black vote out so far has been nowhere close to where it needs to be in places like Atlanta, Georgia, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, etc. But recently, CNN ran a segment where this famous polling analyst guy, you've seen him a couple times now, breaks down this issue Kamala is having with black voters by the numbers, and it is not good. We'll play it for you in a second, but first, folks, please do us a big favor by hitting that subscribe button down below if you are new to the channel. Your subscription, trust me, goes a long way in ensuring we can keep bringing you videos like this, and it is also a great way to stay on top of the breaking news. All you got to do, hit that red subscribe button. Best way you can support our work and our channel. And with that said, take a listen as CNN explains why exactly Kamala Harris is underwater with the very demographic you think she should be doing the best with.
And sometimes there's a trend line that I never noticed before and make me go, whoa. This is one of them, all right? This is the Democratic margin among black men under the age of 45 in presidential elections. You go back to November of 2012, what do you see? You see Obama by 81. Clinton only won him by 63. Then we're all the way down to Biden last time around by 53. A tremendous drop already. And then you take a look at the average of the most recent polls, and Kamala Harris is up by only 41 points. That is about half the margin that Obama won them by back in November of 2012. And this, I think, is, when Barack Obama goes in last week when he was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, essentially talking to young black men, he made it seem like it was a Kamala Harris specific problem. This is part of a long-standing trend of young black men moving away from the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris is just the latest to face that magnitude of younger black men going towards the Republicans.
That was what's most interesting here is the trend line and where some of the biggest drops happened or already happened in this case. How about black men overall?
How about black men overall? It's part of the same picture,
Wow.
We're looking once again, if younger black men, it looks like the worst Democratic performance since 1960, since JFK versus Richard Nixon. It's the same thing among black men overall. Again.
So, common sense, I don't need to explain why these numbers are so bad. With that said, again, some important caveats when we talk about the black vote. When you break it down by gender, in terms of black voters, black women comprise 70% of the African-American vote. So that's important also to consider. A lot of these black men that you hear about supporting Trump are not necessarily going to make it to the polls by statistics, unfortunately. And, that's why I guess turnout or trying to get out there is very important, but it is what it is. But still, right? You're talking about what they keep saying a million times is going to be a razor close election. If she just drops off in turnout of black male voters, if she loses 5% of them, 10%, 15%, that poses a major problem, right? At that point, again, a state like Georgia is unwinnable. Your margins that you hope to run up in Detroit, in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, places like that. It's just not there. It's not really, you can't really find it, you know? So that's why, again, this is such a big concern, I think.
Part of a similar trend, but here actually the drop-off isn't as dramatic, right? Barack Obama won him by 85, then you see 71 with Clinton, 69, Biden, basically the same thing, holding steady. But here, again, very, very weak, only a 54-point margin. Now, again, still winning them by a large margin, but considerably lower than what we're used to, certainly considerably lower what we had during the Obama years. The bottom line is Kamala Harris with younger black men and then black men overall putting in historically weak performance for a Democratic
Is she
candidate.
getting any
You see that margin right there, too. Lowest since 1960. I mean, wow.
relief with black women?
All right. So, you know, we're talking about the trend line, right? And black women, look, she's doing better with black women than she is doing among black men. But here, there isn't a trend line almost until we get to Kamala Harris. So again, this is a black margin among black women. Look, Obama won him by 93, very large margin. Clinton won him by 93, a very large margin. Biden did a little bit worse at 85, but then you look here,
Wow.
he's got a 71-point margin. Now again, these are large margins, but the bottom line is when you're talking about the base of the Democratic Party, you would think that Kamala Harris would do very well among black women based upon history, and of course she would be the first black woman president, but she's actually doing the worst for a Democratic candidate among black women since 1960, if this holds, John.
And again, when you look at the numbers here, whenever you come in, looking at the trends is probably the most important thing.
You got it, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's big, because like I said, right? Black women comprise way more of the black voting population than black men. And even there, she's down 14 points. Now, could the polls be off? I mean, we kind of saw it before, you know, in 2020, there was this big speculation that Trump was going to do great in the black community, and that obviously never materialized. But still, okay, when you correlate these numbers in the polls with the idea that it's not just about voting for Trump, okay, that's actually not necessary in large margins when we talk about the black community. It is just literally an issue of stay home and don't vote for Democrats. And that's enough for the Republican to win the state when you consider other demographic groups. And you combine that, like I said, you know, in the last video, with the early voting trends that are showing, yes, a lower black turnout, and these polls that are saying there's much less black enthusiasm for Kamala than past Democrat candidates, it becomes pretty obvious why they're so desperate and why they're bringing out Barack Obama, of all people, to try to plead, as you may have seen recently, black voters and specifically black men to please vote for Kamala Harris. You know, how dare you not do this? Take a listen.
Communities is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly and say that when you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain and joy that comes from those experiences. Who's had to work harder and do more and overcome and achieves the second highest office in the land.
That's how you know they're, I mean, even Barack Obama straight up says they're desperate, right? We've not seen the turnout we need. Please, please. What are you doing? By the way, I don't know if the strategy of shaming, frankly, is going to work, but in their defense, I guess they gotta try something, because no other appeal they are playing for is getting, again, not in terms of like, oh, all the black people are gonna vote for Trump, but rather the turnout. The turnout. This is the biggest word I always say is most important in this election that they require in order to deliver victory.
It was a rough week. I mean, her faves are down. They're struggling with, I mean, the front page of the New York Times this morning, Democrats struggling with African American voters, particularly African American men. This gender gap issue is real. It's a real problem, and you see the Democrats reacting to it. And I think what they are now finally in October of the election coming to realize is that a lot of men think Democrats care more about dudes who want to become women than dudes who just want to be dudes.
Well,
and no hunting, cosplay, or cringy videos is going to change it. The bet is made. Working class men, whether you're black, Hispanic, or white, persistently, consistently do not believe the Democratic Party, and specifically Kamala Harris, are going to do a thing for them. They've been told that they're the problem, and I suspect they're going to rise up on Election Day and tell the elites who told them that you're wrong.
So yeah, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Do you think black turnout for Kamala Harris will be able to match what you saw that gave Biden a very narrow victory back in 2020? Or, you know, does the early voting data, do the polls, does general sentiment, does the fact that Barack Obama is desperately pleading for their votes seem to indicate it's not happening, right? It's the people are just staying home